Hello and welcome. With Gardner Intelligence, I'm Michael Gukas, Chief Economist and Director of Analytics. It's my privilege to share with you in this video Gardner's look back at manufacturing during 2020. And while the past year was truly one without precedent on a whole host of fronts, there are plenty of takeaways from 2020's gyrations that will help you as a manufacturing leader make the most of this new year. Lastly, before we start, I would like to remind our viewers that Gardner Intelligence can provide a wealth of business strategy insights to manufacturers by your geography, company size, manufacturing disciplines such as metalworking, production machining, plastics, composites, and finishing, just to name a few. Also, our data can break out information about manufacturing by end markets, everything from automotive to shipbuilding. If after this presentation you want to learn more about the specific factors impacting your business, then please reach out to Gardner Intelligence, either by going to our website at www.gardnerintelligence.com or by using the contact information at the end of this presentation. And now, without further ado, I present to you Gardner's 2020 Manufacturing Year in Review. At year end, the index rose to 53.5, putting it near an 18-month high. During the year, we saw what has so far amounted to a weak V-shaped recovery. What we mean by that is that conditions broadly deteriorated quickly and severely in the March through May period, with a quickly growing proportion of survey respondents reporting worsening conditions. By August, the contraction in business activity had largely ended, and since then, business activity has registered readings above the 50 line, which denotes the point of no change in month-to-month business activity levels. In the period between August and present, at a macro level, or to borrow the analogy, at the 30,000-foot level, the index is telling us that conditions have stabilized. You might even be so bold as to say that conditions have improved slightly if we were to take recent readings in the 52 to 54 point range at face value. As we dig below the surface of that top line number, though, we will see that the index is telling us a rather complicated story. Here in slide 2 are the independent readings of the 6 business components which constitute the Gardner Business Index. I've highlighted 4 of them here. Starting from top to bottom in green, we see the movement of supply chain activity across the history of the index. Supply chain disruptions challenged manufacturing all year long and will continue to do so into 2021. Many manufacturers, of course, struggled during the first half of the year as government officials in the US and abroad abruptly shut down huge swaths of the economy. Businesses found themselves unable to continue operations in part or in whole until restrictions were lifted weeks and even months later. By mid-year, supply chain improvements were evident as supplier delivery readings fell from their initial March and April peak readings. This doesn't mean the problem was solved outright, but rather that firms were finding partial solutions to reduce order-to-fulfillment times from upstream suppliers. The issue worsened in the fourth quarter as manufacturers waited longer for delivery trucks to bring them the parts, materials, and other products necessary for them to maintain production operations. This was inevitable as seasonal e-commerce sales ballooned and COVID vaccine distribution efforts consumed a lot of the available capacity on logistics networks. This resulted, as we all experienced, in slower delivery times. The sum of all these disturbances resulted in a December record high reading for supplier deliveries, meaning that an unprecedented proportion of manufacturers indicated that shipments were arriving later than ever before. As we look at production, new orders, and backlogs in this slide, we see the healthy rebound that occurred in the second half of the year. We saw production and new orders both lead many other components of the index higher. This was as we would expect, because new orders tends to be one of the strongest leading indicators of the rest of the index. Production oftentimes follows very closely behind. The one thing that we are concerned about moving into 2021 again is the fact that backlogs continue to rise here. We've seen them hit a near 2-year high in the latest month's data. And so the concern is simply that as supply chains continue to struggle under the weight of COVID, that new orders simply will not be able to be fulfilled because desired production levels simply can't occur. This is something that we're going to have to carefully watch for as we move into 2021. Here in slide 4, we're showing you activity around prices received and material prices. The line in orange being a sign of manufacturers' pricing power, the ability for you to pass higher prices on to your downstream customers. On the other hand, the blue line representing material prices is a proxy for input goods and inventories. How much is it costing you to make the products that you then sell downstream? I wanted to share this chart with you because there's an important pricing component to this situation around supply chains. If you've taken an Economics 101 course before, Early on, you were taught that there were that where supply and demand intersect, that is where prices and quantities are decided. In reality, of course, it's a bit more complicated, but in short, we saw in the second half of the year a quickly growing proportion of manufacturers reporting that their upstream costs were increasing. Our data doesn't tell us how big the jump is, only that a very large proportion of firms are experiencing rising input costs to production. On the other side, we are seeing that a growing proportion of manufacturers are beginning to raise prices. In my experience working with manufacturers over the last many years, one thing I've noticed is that large firms tend to be price movers. They're the first to raise prices, while the other firms, out of fear of losing customers, tend to hold down prices far too long. This same situation appears to already be playing out now in the fourth quarter of the year and as we move into 2021. When we look at our data by size, there's almost a perfect relationship between rising prices and company size. If you're a small firm that finds yourself in this situation, take heart in knowing that a growing proportion of your larger competitors have already started raising prices. So what all of this means for manufacturers in 2021 is that by controlling your supply chains ever more vigilantly, you will be able to protect lost revenues. You will be able to make sure that you have production available for those new orders that are still coming in. Secondly, having a bolstered supply chain means that you'll be able to better control your costs. One of the things that we've seen here in the data is just the rapid increase in material prices and upstream supply costs. The better that you're able to bolster your supply chain and manage it, hopefully the better you'll be able to control those costs. And in doing so, you'll be able to protect your margins. Lastly, I want to say thank you to all of those who have taken time throughout 2020 to fill out the Gartner Business Index. I know that there are a lot of competing factors for your time. I thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy day once a month to fill out the GBI. We greatly appreciate it, and we very much so enjoy turning it around and turning it into actionable insights for you. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen here today, you can always reach out to me directly or to our team at Gartner Intelligence. For Gartner Intelligence, again, I'm Michael Gukas, Chief Economist and Director of Analytics. Thank you so much for your time, and may you have a prosperous 2021.